Hey there, welcome back to Joe on Joe. It's me, your host, Joe Slepsky, and it is time to start Season 4 of the DIC episodes, everybody. That's right, this is the show where we watch every episode of G.I. Joe, the Real American Hero cartoon in sequential order and comment on it mystery science style. We've passed the Rubicon, is what I'd like to think about this now. We've put the first season of DIC behind us. And we're heading into the final episodes of the show and the final episodes of the DIC era. And I am happy to report that, at least so far, the quality has improved. I don't know what changes they made behind the scenes. I don't know what, maybe the budget's increased. I don't know what happened. But I am happy to report that the quality of today's episode, which is Infested Island, has increased multifold over the previous season, and I would have no one with me to cross the threshold more than my brother from the East Coast. He's a man who I've spoke with a couple times, but I've known him socially via social media for a good number of years now, and I love the cut of his jib. We our opinions line up on almost everything when it comes to geekdom and nerddom and fandom and all that stuff. He is a very talented man. He's a podcaster. He's a comic book creator, and he is calling in from Florida. I forgot to get the city, but he is calling in, and his name is Gene Hoyle from Nerd Nation Radio. Gene, welcome to Joe on Joe.
Joe, thanks for having me. And I'll tell you, I'm in West Palm Beach, first off. And second, here's an important thing. I waited till season 4 because I think that this era of G.I. Joe is like the Frank Miller Batman era, you know? It's the period I waited for, and I'm here now, and I'm excited.
Gene, you need to know that we only speak truth on this TV.
Oh, it's crap then.
This podcast. No, not that it's crap, but you come on. You've never seen these episodes. You're well versed in comic stuff, but you've never seen these episodes, buddy.
I really haven't. I loved Joe as a kid, but I never got this far into it.
Yeah.
I will tell you that I had so many Joe action figures in my superhero universe that all my action figures were in one universe.
Oh, were they? Okay.
Oh, absolutely. That was the easiest way to play with them.
That's so interesting. You know what? This might be the first place that you and I diverge when it comes to this stuff. I'm not fooling. My universes were strict. G.I. Joe played with G.I. Joe. You know, they were, as the current commander-in-chief likes to say, my universes were separate but equal.
Well, it was really, your way is a lot easier because I had to explain how these big muscular He-Men interacted with my little toes. Yeah, and the answers weren't always good.
I think I was afraid for like just the sexual potency of He-Man facing off against G.I. Joe. Like it was just too much. It was just too much. I think that's why I'd always kept him away. I don't know. I don't know what it was about that for me, but I think it was the scales more than anything. And I never really I really only had 4, I guess, but Star Wars at this point, it's weird. As much of a huge Star Wars fan as I am, I followed that pattern of childhood where by 83, 84, 85 after Jedi, I wasn't that into it anymore, you know, because there wasn't a new movie to keep me interested, you know. So
yes,
I really did fall away from the toys, and I was only about He-Man and Transformers and G.I. Joe, and that was it. Like I didn't do any Mask, I didn't do any of like the knockoff soldier toys. I like literally none of them. Like if it was an option to buy one, I'd be like, why would I want that? It's not G.I. Joe, or it's not He-Man, or it's not Transformers. So that was all that I had. I didn't have any Thundercats. I didn't have any GoBots. I didn't have any She-Ra, but that was probably more because I was like, ooh, girl toys. And
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then they were different scales. So my brain was like, well, they're obviously not from the same universe, so this can't happen. So let's not do this.
Right. Well, the great thing is the Secret Wars and the Superpowers figures were relatively on scale with the Joes. And that Star Wars and a few of the smaller lines made up the majority of what I had.
Yeah.
The Raiders of the Lost Ark figures, I had the villain, what's his name? Tote? The guy with
the...
Yeah, the guy, the face melting guy. I had him, and I loved him. He was my main villain.
Well,
So he was just so cool looking.
Tote was dope. I did have the Indiana Jones figures. Oh, you know what? That's so funny now that you say that. Well, I think I was a front runner for licensed properties. I think that's what I was. Because like Indiana Jones, I was like, yeah, they have action figures. I had a couple of those. I had like the Temple of Doom ones. And I think it bothered me that the Temple of Doom ones were a different scale than the Raiders ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I hated that.
And I remember I had like Greatest American Hero.
Oh my God.
And I had the Fall Guy truck. So, okay, I was a front runner is what I was. That's really the answer. I totally, if it was branded, I was in. That's so funny. Yeah, if it was branded, I was in.
It's a good way to be. And of course, I had my favorite action figures of all time, the Crystar, the Crystal Warrior.
Oh, wow. I've read the comic, never had the toy. The comic was really good.
The comic was amazing.
Yeah, it legitimately was good.
Yeah, and people never believe me when I say that. I still have all the issues, and I love them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, read this and read Atari Force. And they're like, you're out of your mind.
Oh, my gosh. I was just talking about Atari Force on Joe and Joe Illustrated, which is our patron exclusive podcast, where we're talking about comics and stuff. And we look at the books that came out during during the month that the issue we're talking about came out. And V did just start, but also Atari Force started just a few months ago. And I can't sing the praises of Atari Force enough. It's wonderful. Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, beautiful artwork.
And the story, it was good sci-fi.
Yes.
People kind of throw it down because it's a licensed property, but it's probably the best licensed property out there as far as comics go.
Yeah, you might be right about that, and I wonder if it's because Atari being a foreign company, if they were so hands off, which you hear stories about Hasbro being hands off with GI Joe, about basically saying, all right, Marvel, make them up, like go for it, like Larry Hama, make what you want to do, which is great. And then the horror stories come into play when it's like the company that's really hands on with it, and they keep sending revisions. But maybe it was because Atari was just over in Japan and like, do whatever you want, sure, make the guy, we don't care.
I bet you that was it, because the initial characters, they were all named for games, Tempest and whatever. But then once you got into the book, you didn't see that a lot. There weren't planets from the games. They didn't go fight the Star Raiders or anything. And so, yeah, I think you're right. I think they were pretty much off, and they didn't care. And it only ran 20 issues. I mean, and then the 5 mini issues, of course.
Yeah. Do you have I have all these comic book sized comics, and I have like 2 of the mini comics from literally from holdover from when I was a kid. But I think the 3 remaining mini comics I have yet to seek out.
I used to have all 5. I don't have all 5 now. I'm actually, next year in March, the Nerd Nation crew is we're getting in a car and we're going to go to Middle America, and we're going to hit about 100 comic stores on the way to the Hall of Heroes in Indiana. I'm looking for those mini comics. That's on my list.
Wow. Okay, so let's unpack all that, but let's first start with Nerd Nation Radio. Nerd Nation Radio is your podcast brand. It's your channel. It's who you identify as. Let's talk about. Tell me more about Nerd Nation Radio.
Oh man, I'll tell you. I moved to Florida. I lived in New York most of my life. Moved to Florida in 2000. There was a good chunk of time from 2000 to like 2007 where I read comics, but I didn't have anybody to talk to about them. I didn't know anyone from the stores, and it was miserable for me. And I needed to reconnect with my nerddom. So I decided, all right, you know what? Let me do a podcast. And I was just about to go to MegaCon. So through the MegaCon like Facebook page, I met this fellow named Josh Fonner. And I'm like, let's just do a podcast, because we were both doing the Stan Lee VIP package that year.
Nice.
So we bonded through that, and we started doing a podcast together. And that was Nerd Nation, which later on, once Josh left us, and actually a mutual friend of ours became my co-host, Seek Donnelly.
Absolutely.
We became Nerd Nation Radio. Seek came on with the New 52 review. I had heard about him through Bleeding Cool, and his experience touched me. And so I reached out to him, and we kind of became buddies, and he came on the show, and that helped a lot with our friendship. And he came to visit us a year later for MegaCon to do some panels together. And the podcast has been pretty much going ever since. It stopped for a little bit, and then I reconnected with an old friend from here, who was just like us, Joe. I know you and I connect so much on a comic level, and Kurt is just like that.
Great.
So Kurt joined me once Seek was kind of not able to do the weekly thing anymore. Kurt came on in, and my buddy Jack, who had been with us from the beginning, and now it's the three of us. And because we're best friends anyway, we all live right here in the same area.
Sure.
So we record from Kurt's house, and it's terrific. We're back on. We're doing 3 shows a week now, which is not what I expected to be doing.
That's great.
And we're taking this road trip next year, which is essentially my bachelor party. So I'm getting married in 2 years.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So instead of doing a standard party, I'm taking this trip.
Yeah, that's great. I was just reading about that Hall of Heroes that's opening in Indiana. So, I'm originally from Chicago, and so, of course, they open everything cool when I leave.
We had intended on going to Jeppy's museum.
Yeah,
they just
closed that down. Yeah. So when is this epic road trip planned? Like, what are the months?
It's going to be next March. It's going to be 8 days, and we're going to drive first to Metropolis, Illinois, and go see the Superman.
Yeah.
Because I've never done that, and unfortunately, it's not during Superman Celebration. But still, I want to go.
Yeah.
And we're going to stop at stores on the way, then over to Hall of Heroes, and then we'll crawl our way back to Florida from there.
You know what you should do? You should
What's that?
add a day to your trip and go to go to Cleveland. As long as you're doing that trip, you need to stop in Cleveland. You need to see Siegel and Schuster.
I would love to do that. We'd actually had plans to go into Chicago and do a lot of stuff there, but we're trying to keep it relatively cheap too. So that's one of the factors.
Well, I got to tell you, honestly, it's not a terrible drive from where you're going to be at in Indiana to jump over to Cleveland and see the Siegel Schuster stuff. It's not that far. So think about it. Have you mapped out all the comic shops that you're going to go to yet, or are you still working on that?
We've mapped out all the comic shops that are in the area. Also, antique stores, thrift stores. So we're thrifters because we're old ladies.
Sure. Well, that's where you're going to find the bargains.
Well, that's where I find I like pop culture glasses.
Yeah.
Like the McDonald's glasses and stuff.
Yeah.
And I find stuff at Goodwill's all the time. I found interestingly enough, and I haven't researched it yet, but I found a Pluto drawing, which is clearly from a professional artist. And I'm trying to find out about this artist a little bit. So I'm going to research that. I found that at Goodwill. I find glasses. I found a book that's 100 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, man. We do it too. We go to all the thrift stores whenever possible. So we're going to hit all those places. The thing is, we actually have more places than we could possibly hit. So we're gonna figure it out day by day. But we do have a list of every comic store in our path and near our path.
Very cool.
And also weird roadside attractions.
The weird part. That's always going to be exciting. So if someone went to nerdnationradio.com, you said you got 3 weekly podcasts. Let's talk about them. The main one is called Nerd Nation Radio, and then you got one called We've Got Issues.
Yeah, We've Got Issues is a review of that week's books.
Cool.
It's pretty extensive because between the three of us, we've read almost everything.
Yeah.
And then the third one is Top 5 Tuesdays, which almost always airs on Tuesdays.
Top 5 Tuesdays, which regularly drops Saturday morning.
Exactly. That'd be something like Top 5 Favorite Single Issues we did recently.
Oh, excellent. And what's your top 5? Like, give me your top single issue. What was the single issue? Just to let's give everyone a flavor of your taste. We've gotten a little bit of it so far.
One of them, and I'm not sure if this was my number 1, but I think it probably was. Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man number 20.
Okay.
It was written by Paul Jenkins. This is post Clone Saga.
Oh, okay. So volume 2.
Yeah, it's an issue where Peter is at Uncle Ben's grave, and he can't have fun anymore. Mary Jane's dead or missing. The whole Clone Saga happens. He's just miserable. He's terrible, and he's asking Uncle Ben how he can go on. And there's a bunch of flashbacks with him and Uncle Ben in the issue. And then in the end, he says, Uncle Ben, just give me a sign that I should keep doing this. And a car drives by, and it's raining. And the car just splashes all this mud, water, and crap all over Peter. And Peter just stops, and he looks up at the sky, and he starts laughing. and he's got it back. Like that. That's it. No Spider-Man the whole issue, but it's the perfect Peter Parker story, and it gets him back to being able to be Spidey, and the Spidey that we love. And it was just Paul Jenkins on Spider-Man it's something that I don't understand why people don't talk about more, because he did the perfect Spider-Man, probably better than anyone else ever.
Paul Jenkins is a very, very talented writer to begin with.
I agree. But he knows Peter. Like, he can get in his hole.
Well, that era was overshadowed by Straczynski. He cast that huge shadow for good or ill.
Right. Yeah, and I'd have a lot to say about Straczynski's run, both good and bad. But I think Jenkins was by far the superior writer in that book.
I see what you did there with the word superior.
That was later.
I see what you did there. It's funny. The longtime listeners know that I my main job is I do marketing for Gamefly, and in the latest email that we had to send out, it was our coming soon email, and that Spider-Man game is about to drop, which is hotness. Yeah. By the way, I cannot wait to play that game. And I was doing the write-up for the coming soon email, and I managed to sneak in the word spectacular, amazing, superior, and even use the phrase Marvel team up. It was a marvelous team up. I only feel disappointed that I did not figure out a way to use like enter his web of in there.
Yeah.
Somewhere. Yeah. That was the only, or friendly neighborhood, or yeah. So I
then
do.
You were the master.
Yeah.
Yes.
I do my best to sneak those references in. And it's funny. The only time anyone ever caught me on one was a reference that I actually wasn't making. Someone sent an email to, I forget what I wrote, but it was something or other. And someone replied to the editor and said, "Oh man, you referenced that like sweet indie band from Europe named blah blah blah," and they're like, "That's so cool." And I had no idea what they were talking about, and I just replied back, "You got it. I'm a massive fan. Thanks a lot."
Just go with the flow. Yeah, I think that long-term comic fans like you and I, in our normal lives, whenever we get a comic connection going, we get it going.
Oh, for sure. So let's talk comic connection. Let's talk Nerd Nation. And when we combine the two, we get a fantastic Kickstarter that you guys are currently running. So right now, if you go to nerdnationradio.com, you'll find a link to their Kickstarter. If you go directly to Kickstarter, just do a search for Nerd Nation, and you're going to find it. You guys are the Kickstarter ends on 9/18. And you're trying to raise just a little bit of money to do what? What are we doing? Getting some more books in publication? Trying to get the books out to people? What are we doing?
Basically, even though the Kickstarter isn't called Nerd Nation Presents, our anthology book Nerd Nation Presents exists for new people to get their names out there, and people that are maybe afraid and daunted by the concept of doing an entire book by themselves. We give them the option. We say, write or draw a 6-pager for us, and we'll put it in the book. And then you can order copies of this book to sell yourself.
Oh.
We don't make any money off of that. That's just how we do it. That's just a way for new people to get out there. And the greatest thing about that is I'll have a story in every issue that I wrote. So all these people selling this book all across the country get my name out there as well. So it's selfish a little bit, but it's also meant to promote people, and it's working really well. And what I want to do is I want to be able to get more copies of this in print. I want to be able to do more shows to sell that book. And I want to maybe even get like a celebrity cover to draw people in. Because that's kind of the idea. Like with the podcast, what I do is I interview indie people all the time. And I try to have larger people in the industry. Like just the other day, we interviewed Carl Kessel. That'll be that'll be popping up in September. In the past, I've done Peter David.
Peter David's such a nice dude. I like him so much.
Oh, he's terrific. The funny thing, the first time he called into the show, we didn't know it was him, and we hung up on him. my first co-host, we were doing an episode with Peter David's daughter. She was trying to raise money for a theater she was opening.
Cool.
And he called in, and he was being goofy, and my co-host thought he was a troll, so he hung up on him. But yeah, so we've had these huge people, and we bring them in, and then in the exact same episode, I interview an indie person. So you come for Peter David, and you stick around for whoever.
Oh, that's
and
great.
that's and the comic is the same way. I'm going to try to do that. Get maybe an artist to do a great cover for us. But even if not, I want to continue doing that book because I love it. I love writing myself. Now that I finally got myself to where I'm convinced I can write, which is still to be determined, of course. I want other people to feel what I feel, and I love that.
Well, it's really wonderful. And what's really wonderful is that, and I hope you're okay with sharing this. It's on the Kickstarter page, and I know it personally. A couple years ago, you had some medical issues. You had a brain aneurysm.
Holy cow! Here's the weird thing. We mentioned our mutual friend Seek earlier.
Yeah, that's where I was going with it.
He had a brain aneurysm, and I connected with him kind of through that. And then we did a book. We edited a book together called Soulstar.
Yep, I contributed to it.
Yes, that was my first comic, and I was editor on that. And then a couple years later, I get a brain aneurysm myself, which the chances of that happening are so.
Dude, when I heard the news, I was like, you got to be kidding! Wait, Gene, the guy who totally shepherded, worked with Seek, edited, produced Seek Donnelly's wonderful book that raised money for brain aneurysm survivors and brain aneurysm research stuff. He just had an aneurysm himself. It was the I don't know, irony or synchronicity was frightening and harrowing. But you're here and you're recovering, and your every day is you're taking a step forward, right?
Yeah, pretty much. It has to go that way because I have the choice of surrendering to it and laying down. There are days where it hurts, and it sucks. I try not to whine about it, but I can't do the things I used to do. Yeah. I can't work a full-time job. And that's one of the reasons I'm doing a Kickstarter like this is, I just need a little extra funding to keep the book going.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to keep going. I mean, I could stop down and be like, sorry guys, I'm sick, but I'm not going to do that.
No,
I'm going to keep going.
You have to. Yeah, you have to.
Yeah. Cause I figure I could be laying on my couch with a headache with a comic that I wrote, or I can be here without a comic that I wrote.
Right.
So which is the better choice, Yeah. And doing this stuff keeps me going.
Totally. And what's great about Kickstarter is that you're not just, giving money to someone. You're actually saying, hey, here's a product. Here's a thing. You're going to get something in return for it. You're going to get this sweet comic book that you're going to enjoy. And you're going to help independent people realize their dreams and keep roofs over their heads and things like that, right?
Well, yeah, that's it exactly. We have there's 4 Nation comics. There's there's Gateway Runners. There's Labyrinth of Bones. There's the 2 Nation Presents, soon to be 3, because the 3rd one will be out in December. They're all available through this Kickstarter. You can also appear in the book. There's an option for that. We have some for if you're long-term Nerd Nation fans. We have T-shirts and mugs and little sippy cups you can buy.
But if you're short-term Nerd Nation fans, you can go to hell. You could take that interest to wear our T-shirts and just go scratch.
Well, if you're a new guy and you want our shirt, God bless you. But I don't know if the guy listen to one podcast because it'd be like, man, what would make this day better? A Nerd Nation T-shirt.
Hey, you know what? You never turn down a sale. You never know. You never know.
Of course not. And we do want new listeners. So for you Joe on Joe fans, after you're finished listening to this show, go check out one of ours. It's not so bad.
Please do, guys. Please do. It's a very entertaining broadcast. They talk about a wide range of pop culture stuff. They don't just zero in on one cartoon and spend 2.5 years drilling down incessantly on it. So, and then go online and find them at Nerd Nation Radio. That's on that's your Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, I believe.
Yeah, all that stuff. Yeah. We were actually even on Tumblr.
Oh, and on Tumblr.
It's funny. Yeah, we're actually on Tumblr.
It's the web, the web for gymnasts.
Yes. We are actually, and we're not actually on there, but if you listen to our show till the end, we talk about all our social media and our little closing thing. And we have mentioned that we're on Grindr from day one. And no one has ever said a word about it. We're not actually on Grindr, obviously.
Well, you're not. No, see, that's the thing. You need to put yourself on Grindr.
We wanted to with Jack's picture.
Why aren't you?
I don't know. We should probably.
If you're gonna do that joke, you need to put yourself on Grindr. Oh, yes, you do. Describe your podcast. Put yourself on Grindr. Put it on Tinder. Put it on all the major dating apps, and describe the person that you're creating. Describe them how you would describe your podcast. So, like, I'm a very open person. I like to talk to all kinds of people. My interests are nerd geek, social, pop culture stuff. I like to go out like 3 times a week usually. On Tuesdays, I like to go out and talk to people about like my top 5 things. Once a week, I like to, when I go out on a date, I like to kind of wrap up the week with people and just to see what they thought of all the new releases that week, and do that. And that should be you should absolutely do that as a project. Please do. Please do.
Well, since you told me to, I think I'm going to.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. And yes. And as long as you're on the internet, you make sure you're going to follow me at Joe on Joe Pod, and that's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Send me an email at joeonjoepod@gmail.com. If you're listening and you want to be a guest on the show, if you love GI Joe, or if you just have your own like geek, nerdy, social thing to promote, or if you just want to talk, if you want to call in and be like, listen, I don't care for GI Joe. I don't care for pop culture, nerd, geek stuff, but listen, I like to hear my voice on a podcast, and here's an outlet for you to do it. Send me an email, joeandjoepod@gmail.com. I'll have you on, and I'll get to the inner core of the things that you like. That's what I do here, Gene. That's what I do with Joe on Joe. Also,
that was sexy.
Yeah, thank you. Also, we do have a Patreon over here at Joe on Joe, and if you become a patron and support the show at our Viper level, you can get full access to Joe and Joe Illustrated, which, Gene, I'm not sure if you know this. As of this recording, I just put up episode 32. I am going issue by issue in depth into every issue of G.I. Joe.
Dude, I love the comic. As much as I like the cartoon, and I do love the cartoon, the comic is
where it's at. And I am going page by page, panel by panel, breaking it down, like artistically, breaking it down creatively, like looking at the creators and where they were at the time. It's a deep dive and literally going issue by issue. It's not a review show in that regard. It's not like, hey, I like this issue and I like the way they. Oh no, it's, hey, this is what happens on this page. Let's talk about it.
Oh, that's amazing. And I'm gonna have to make sure I make a note to myself when I listen to this. I am actually friends with a fellow down here in South Florida. Who is one of the largest G.I. Joe collectors in the world.
What?
His name is Irving Santiago.
Okay.
And he runs a show down here called UltraCon, and he does auctions. I went to a show, and it was PalmCon down here in West Palm Beach. The entire back wall of the convention center is filled with Joe memorabilia. There's or Joe like action figures and toys. He's got like 50 his tanks. He's got 5 or 6 Cobra drones.
Wow.
The big drone.
Sure.
He's got a bunch. He's got a bunch of the flags.
Whoa.
This guy has everything. So I'm going to make sure he knows about your show.
Please do, and please tell him. I'd love to have him on. That would be amazing. Absolutely.
Ooh, I could probably make that happen, make that a reality.
That would be dynamite. So let's talk about your connection to G.I. Joe. Like, what was your experience with G.I. Joe? You said you had a lot of the action figures when you were a kid. Like, were they one of your primary players, or what are we looking at here?
The vast majority of action figures I had as a kid were G.I. Joes. And that's because that line was active, when I was in my prime action figure time and when I had a little bit of money to spend and my parents would spend it. One of the early toys I got was the Cobra Hiss Tank, which is still my favorite vehicle of all time.
It's such a good toy. Such a good toy.
So good. And I would like kind of twist it around a little bit and pop it up out of the treads so it could fly. To me, it was a double utility vehicle. So it flew around too. And man, the figures were just so cool. Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow and Jenkins, those were just the ninjas. I mean, Snow Job.
Were you a big ninja fan?
I like the ninjas, but I also like Snow Job was one of my favorites. The guy with the red hair and the dog, or no, he didn't have the dog. He had the snowmobile, I think, and the skis. And some of the strange ones like Big Boa. I actually have a Big Boa right now.
Do you really?
Actually, it's funny. I won it on a Facebook page last year.
Oh, that's so
there
funny.
Was something like one of those like and share things. I did it, and I got a Big Boa in the mail.
Do you know the history of Big Boa?
Yeah, didn't it relate to Stallone?
Yes.
And Rambo?
Yes.
And all that nonsense, and then he was going to become a Joe, but he didn't.
Yeah, Rocky Balboa was going to become a Joe. He is literally pictured in the G.I. Joe comic, the Order of Battle comic, which was like their official handbook of the Marvel Universe, but for GI Joe.
Yeah.
And they drew him and they added him in there, but apparently all the contracts hadn't been signed yet. And so the Balboa people either, I don't know if they wanted too much money or they just changed their mind or whatever, but Stallone pulled out of it. And Hasbro had already been down the road because they needed an enemy. They needed someone for Rocky to fight. And so they were developing Big Boa. And there you go. That's how you get Big Boa.
Yep. I somewhere, I may have the fridge still, but I have a ton of the figures. Yeah, and I love the basic.
I wish
Cobra
they had followed that same line of thinking for the fridge, like to give him an enemy would have been like the freezer or the icebox or that maybe would have been an ally. Maybe the fridge. Oh, I know what it would have been. I got it. The fridge's enemy would have been a Cobra named Freezer Burn.
Ooh, I like that.
That would have been it. It would have been like a cold weather soldier. That
I like
he was an ex. Oh my God, it's writing itself. He's an ex Green Bay Packer, so he's used to the cold, and his name is Freezer Burn, and he carries a gun that gives people like that freezer burn. Oh, that's it. That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
We just created the fridge's arch enemy.
Should we write a continuing GI Joe series? Launching off from the end of the old one?
I feel like it's just time to wrap up. I feel like there's nothing else to talk about here because. I mean, how are we going to top that? So I'm excited today. We're going to watch Infested Island, Gene. And for you listeners following along, so we've done pretty much every episode of this show. We've been following the order on the discs, right? So the officially released DVDs, we've just been going from one. And I know that on the DIC ones, those weren't exactly in publication or viewing order, right? But I made the choice when we got to this season because the order on the DVDs on this one are more messed up than anything I've ever seen.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they are. I have a feeling that the good people at was it Shout Factory? Yeah, the good people at Shout Factory. I think they may have just ordered these more for like how they fit on the discs rather than interest of keeping them in sequential order. So with that in mind, everyone, if you're watching on the Shout Factory discs, this is season 2, disc 2. It's buried. It's like the 5th episode on the disc, but it was according to the wonderful book Now You Know that we reference quite a bit on the show. This was the first episode that aired, and it makes sense because it's not treated like any kind of pilot episode, but they really do go out of their way to introduce everyone by name, and you're meeting a lot of new guys. We're getting the Eco Warriors, we're getting Cesspool and like the Cobra Toxo Vipers. It's all about ecology and bioterrorism and stuff. So everyone's name checked really, really well in this. And it makes sense. So we are dancing around a little bit for the remainder of this season, guys. So I hope everyone can follow along pretty well. So, one more plug with all this comics talk. We got to talk about Dreamer Comics Podcast, Gene. I don't know if you've listened to this. You're a comic book creator. Dreamer Comics Podcast. It's our friend Omar Spahi, who you know Omar through Seek Donnelly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's his podcast, and it is all about breaking into comics. So, Gene, if you haven't given it a listen, you need to. Listeners, if that's of any interest to you, you need to go find it. Dreamer Comics Podcast. It's on all the podcast outlets, and it's great. Omar talks to working professionals, big names names that are on your weekly comics, and he talks about the dreams and the steps that they took to go from just being someone like us, just sitting in our home to, hey, how can I do it? In fact, Gene, you'd probably be a great guest on that show too, because you're someone who is like, hey, I want to make comics, and now I'm making comics. So
it really is a terrific show. If I could be at the level that some of his guests are on, I would gladly sit down at a table with him and do it. It's good stuff, and you guys should listen for sure.
Little known behind the scenes, that show only exists because he was a guest on Joe on Joe.
Really? Yeah, excellent. Got the fever.
He did. He's a buddy, and I went over and we recorded and we had a great time. And a little while later, he's like, you know what? I'm going to do my own podcast. I had so much fun doing Joe on Joe with you, and he credits me to this day. So I'm very happy to have him on board.
Yeah, Omar's a great guy. I was able to meet him once. I think when we came down for Comic-Con. I met him briefly, and we talked quite a bit. And in fact, I really can't say much, but possibly you might see in the next year or two a project that we did together come out.
Very exciting. Through Awesome or through Nerd Nation?
Through Awesome.
Oh,
I can't say another word about it.
All right.
Other than me and Seek.
Oh,
and
I love
PJ.
it. That is a murderer's row of talent. So keep your eyes peeled to nerdnationradio.com for all those details. Now, without any further ado, let's get into some G.I. Joe. Are you ready, Gene?
I'm ready.
Listeners, get your DVDs ready. And here we go with Infested Island. Here we go. So the first thing we notice is we start with a cold open, Gene. That's a whole new thing. Yeah, it's a whole new thing. We get the G.I. Joe logo, which I've watched a couple ahead, and they continue to do that. So like they it's almost as if they weren't trusting that the kids would understand they were watching G.I. Joe because they're not starting with the theme song, right?
Right, that's kind of terrific. And I must notice that these tanks are both like bastardized his tanks.
Oh, yeah. Well, it is. That's exactly what they are. This is the Septic Tank, and it's being driven by Cesspool. And Cesspool, of course, he was the CEO, the chief environmental operative for Cobra.
That's terrific.
Yeah, and that is the new look Flint, everybody. This is Flint as he's the leader of the Eco Warriors. He's the Eco Warrior Commander.
Well, the 80s were a time of people learning about the environment and becoming warriors, so that's terrific.
Yeah, they were smelling Captain Planet was sniffing at their heels. So they realized they needed to get into the eco warrior. So we've got some gigantic bugs, like a mantis or something, and it throws Cesspool and his septic tank, which, by the way, that might be my favorite name for any vehicle in the whole Joe line, because it's septic tank because it's actually accurate. It's like it's not a funny name. It is just an accurate, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not a pun. It is, you know what I mean? Like, it is a pun, I guess, but it's a great pun.
It is. And this new theme immediately has me kind of like, I'm missing the old one.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, this is we call this the professional wrestling theme, This is the theme that's like, this is your intro when you're coming into SummerSlam, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But here's what I love about this is, they always say, like, sometimes, like, making the theme, theme opening can sometimes be one of the more expensive parts of the show, so they try not to change it. Well, they went and they added all this new footage. So there's a lot of this footage. If you're familiar with the previous season, there's some older footage, but there's a lot of new footage from this current season, and that's exciting. It's exciting to me. I like that because it tells me that they invested in, and like this final group shot, that's the 91 series. Those are all the 91 figures. So we got Infested Island written by Martha Moran.
I don't know, but
excellent. Do you know, Joe, how well were the action figures doing at this point, the line?
It was starting its downturn. They would end 3 years from now. They ended, 94 was the final iteration. So it's definitely on the downturn for sure. Like the number of figures they did this year, here's what it was. At the time, they were more focused on lines. So like in this case, Eco Warriors and Supersonic Fighters. In fact, the next episode, there's a whole bunch of Supersonic Fighters involved, which are like they used Sonics. They came with Sonic accessories and Air Commandos, and they had battle copters and stuff. And it was less focus on individuals without giant accessories. I think that's where the line was going.
Right, sure. Well, yeah, because you can use the old molds and just add the new accessories, and it goes a lot cheaper, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, so we're also getting not necessarily old molds, but old characters that are getting new molds, right? So Flint is an Eco Warrior, right? So it's like another iteration of Flint. Heavy Duty got a second iteration. Let's see who else is on here. Sci-Fi gets a second iteration. General Hawk, Dusty. Snake Eyes, of course, gets one, and we love Snake Eyes. So, like, literally for like this low light. Actually, I'm looking at this year.
Something really weird just popped up on radar.
Big Ben is new. That's one.
Cesspool. Can you be more specific?
Grunt is a reissue. 2 low light. Mercer's a reissue. Red Star. So there's 2 new ones so far.
San Francisco, here we come.
Seriously, out of 14 out of 17 new single carded figures, more than half of which are GI Joes, only 3 of them were new characters.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I wonder if that has something to do with it. So we got a new General Hawk, there's a new Dusty, there's a new Sci-Fi, a new Mercer, there's a new Grunt, and a new Snake Eyes.
Wow.
So if you're and a new low light. So if you're talking about like catching the imagination, right? These aren't necessarily, it's not necessarily forging new ground. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And is this the receptionist from Ghostbusters we just saw there?
It might be. This might have been. This might be her post Ghostbusters 2 job. Yeah. Yeah. This. Yeah. That might be what that is. So I believe that is Clean Sweep. Who's flat? That's Clean Sweep. Who's got that mask that makes him look like someone from the TV show Mask. He looks like the doctor. Was it Venom? The bad guy,
I
Venom?
think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. It's the same kind, but I mean, it's a hazmat mask, but it's the same kind. It makes him look like that. And, and he came with a big old, like, his vehicle looks like a floor buffer. And I'm not.
Well, it kind of makes sense. He's Clean Sweep.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I believe it was used to clean up like sludge. And it looks like he was buffing floors.
And they're playing some background music here, some real hip 80s rock and roll.
And they're flying these they're flying the sweet air commandos. So
available at KV Toy and Hobbies near you.
Yeah, those like gliders that they're in were absolutely readily available at the time. And they were huge. They fit a G.I. Joe guy, and they actually glided.
Nice.
Yeah. Or glided, right?
Yeah, I think it's glided.
It's got to be glided. Yeah.
It's definitely not glowed.
Glowed. It's the ghost of old Tom Glowed. Yeah, this was never my favorite Flint.
Yeah, Flint was always a great character, and it's cool that he's still around in this iteration, but
yeah, that look is not my favorite. But that was Skymate. So that dude that's flying, he's one of the air commandos. So they used the air commando Skymate in order to rescue Flint. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's neat.
And there were 2 Cobras. There was a Night Vulture and a Sky Creeper, and then there were 2 Joes. It was Cloudburst and Skymate.
Those people just flew. Because the claw was like 10 feet off the ground, and they just lifted up to it.
Well, you know what's funny is that so much of this is these guys, even the good cartoon, the people who were putting a ton of money and quality into the cartoons themselves or whatever, they still were making it for something that they thought kids would watch once every 6 months. Without high def on fuzzy TVs. Right.
And what's up with the mayor? The mayor just gave up the city because there's a swarm of bugs over it.
Well, listen. What if you were infested with giant bugs? I
would just call it exterminators. I don't want to give up the whole town. Maybe I'd leave town.
Well, I feel like you're just actually going back to Ghostbusters. I feel like you're just describing the plot of Ghostbusters, but instead of bugs, it was ghosts.
Oh, look, there's Marvel Comics The Beetle guest starring in this
there you
episode.
Go. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You know what? He really does look like the Beetle. We're talking about like Mach 5, pre-Mach 5 Beetle.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
That's cool.
Yeah, well, he's a what is he? He is a is he a Toxo Viper? Yeah, he's a Toxo Viper version Mark II of the Toxo Viper.
And I'm making a lot of snarky comments, but this helicopter has an amazing design. I love like the things at the bottom. It's really neat. I would like this toy if I were younger.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. It's pretty sleek, you know?
Yeah. And I like the little turbo thing.
Yeah.
Turbo in the middle there. Yeah, I'd play with that.
Yeah, it's not bad at all. Cesspool is the main bad guy here, everybody. So he's dunking regular crickets into this toxic sludge. And they're then mutating into those giant creatures. And sludge, yeah. I mean, this is the era of slime, right? You know, this was the era of, you know, goopy slime. So it makes sense that they would try to capitalize on that.
Right.
You know,
is this guy going to become a giant monster now?
He should, right? You would think that.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's almost as if you watched this episode, June.
I can promise you that I have not watched this. When you sent it to me last week, I swore I was not going to watch it until we watched it together. And I did not see it first run.
Well, we're going to commercial, and we'll be right back to see if your prediction came true. Today's file card features on the GI Joe Sky Patrol Demolitions Expert, codenamed Static Line. His file name is Wallace J. Baducci. His primary military specialty is Sky Patrol Demolitions Expert. His secondary military specialty is aircraft maintenance. His birthplace, Chicago, Illinois. The common perception of a demolitions expert is a guy who blows things up. Static Line does the opposite. He prevents things from destruction by diffusing them or rendering them inert. This is an extremely valuable skill if your unit conducts strikes behind enemy lines that are probably mined and booby-trapped with high-impact motion-sensitive firing devices. Quote, Static Line has a nose for finding hard-to-find things, such as money. He picks up $5 bills off sidewalks in front of the movie theaters, 20s from the supermarket checkout line, or even loose change that people carelessly pull out of their pockets. Is he lucky? No. He's just the type of person who constantly examines every square inch of ground before he steps on it. There's a lot to like about Static Line. He has a fantastic flat top. It is absolutely awesome. He's part of Sky Patrol, of course, so he comes with one of the silver parachutes. And everything is silver. So his gun, his helmet. I love that he's from Chicago. That's fantastic. The blue, white, and silver is a very, very, very sharp look. And his personality trait of being the guy that finds loose change everywhere might be one of the weirdest, funniest things I've seen on a file card in a long, long time. Like, that is just an odd thing to do. It makes me think he's an autistic savant like Rain Man or something. So Static Line, Wallace J. Baducci from Chicago, Illinois. We salute you, my friend. Bears. Yeah, so we are back. You know what's funny? Looking at the Cesspool action figure, the image that's drawn on it, it looks like Brett Spiner. And I'm not kidding you. The card like illustration of Cesspool, which the card illustrations for G.I. Joe are fantastic and always have been, always will be. But it looks like they used Brett Spiner as the model for it. It's very funny.
That's terrific.
Yeah. They did revisit Cesspool one other time in 2014. Really? They did an update of him.
What the hell was it?
He's certainly not as exciting. The earlier one had the giant red Cobra on the chest, and he had the metal bracket, like earlier one much better.
Right. It sounds like it.
Yeah. It's also the era of some great mustaches on these characters.
Understood, Commander.
Absolutely.
So, what happened to your GI Joes? Did you keep them? Do you still have them? What's the status of your GI Joe collection?
There's kind of a funny story with that. When I was and I played with my action figures much later than most people did. I played with them probably till I was 15 or 16, like every day. And then I decided it was time to get rid of them because I was actually moving out, and I didn't want to carry them around because I was supposed to be an adult. And I sold them at a yard sale. I regretted that like 5 years later, and slowly have been rebuilding my collection since then. I was keeping them in the box and hang them on the wall. My Joes, my Marvel Legends, all that stuff. In box. You got to keep them in card, right?
Yeah.
Then I had a kid. My kid turned 2, and we had all these cool toys, but he would always look at the wall, and he'd look at the wall like longingly, like those are cool toys, Daddy. When do I get to play with those? So one day I was like, damn it, I have 100 toys on this wall this kid could be playing with.
Yeah.
And I don't care what they're worth. I took them down, we opened them up, and now they're around the house.
Oh, that's
He's
great.
outgrown them. He's outgrown them, but I haven't.
Oh, that's great. Have you like repaired them at all? Are they falling apart? Like, what's happening?
They're in pretty good shape. The ones I have that are loose, I have on a shelf. Some of them are in a box. Most of them are on a shelf. The ones I have, the rubber bands are pretty strong. I do have a completely taken apart Storm Shadow.
Oh yeah.
His rubber bands are toast. I need to find someone who can actually manage those little tiny rubber bands and get them to put them back together again.
Oh yeah.
Because once I do that, I have a perfect action figure. I think I also have a disassembled Scarlet somewhere.
Oh man, we can help you out. I can send you some O-rings for sure.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I may do that at some point.
Or if you want, you send me the snake. Is this you send me the pieces? We'll put them together, and I'll ship them back to you. I'd be happy to do that for you.
All right, cool. Yeah, you have to remind me off the air about that.
In fact, I was talking to someone I'm trying to get on the show. I can't say who it is, but he's a new friend of mine, and he's way into collecting the toys. And so I'm talking about, I want to do a toy refit episode, so where we kind of just look at, because he says he's got a bunch of Joes that all need new O-rings and stuff, and he didn't understand. He didn't know how to fix them. So I was like, well, we can do that. Wow. Yeah, we can do that. We can get into that for an episode. So that might be coming up hopefully in the next couple month or so.
Cool. I do not currently have a Hiss tank though. Oh. And I am looking for one. That's actually on my list for the trip too. I have this want list of things I'm going to get on this trip.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, Hiss tank was actually one of my very first vehicles that I had.
Yep, me too.
That and
the basic Joe helicopter. I forget what it was called.
The Dragonfly. The one the Wild Bill flew. Uh-oh, look over his shoulder. Do you see that?
Oh, what am I looking at?
Ozone is is gone like the Fly. Like he's been toxified.
He
is he's all like, help me. Help me. Once a man. What's interesting on this one is that it is its own. I mean, I love the idea of doing like the toxic stuff and mutation. It's very much Toxic Avenger and all that stuff. Yeah. Which I know they did Toxic Avenger figures. I feel like there was a Toxic Avenger GI Joe tie-in for some reason, but
I think you might be right.
Yeah, I think there was. So we're going to commercial. We'll be right back. Hey listeners, I'm not sure if you've heard the news, but Joe and Joe has started a Patreon, and I'm inviting you along for the ride. Go to patreon.com/JoeandJoePod and check out my page. Right now, there are 2 opportunities for you to help support the show. You can choose to be a Grunt or a Viper. Grunts get access to all the Joe and Joe episodes and early access to new episodes as they're created. Vipers get all that and access to my all-new spin-off podcast, Joe and Joe Illustrated, where I will be breaking down every single issue of the G.I. Joe comic books, page by page, in the deepest dive you'll ever hear on G.I. Joe. So go to patreon.com/JoeandJoePod and see what's happening over at the Fort Wadsworth Motor Pool. We'll see you there. But, in the previous season, Operation Dragonfire, that had the same kind of effect where, in a way, where Cobra Commander was a snake and they hit him with this mystical Dragonfire, and Dragonfire turned Cobra Commander back human. So it's kind of like you know what I mean? So it's like they're dipping a little bit into the same well, but they're going the other direction with it. You know what I mean?
Right, gotcha.
So, Gene, we love on this show, we love to ask my guests if you could be a member of G.I. Joe or Cobra. What type of member? Well, one, who would you be? Would you be a G.I. Joe or would you be a Cobra? Then what would your specialty be? And then let's come up with a name for you.
I think it'd be a Cobra because I think they have a lot more fun.
It is about time. The last 6 months, everyone's been like, G.I. Joe, G.I. Joe. I'm like, no, you're evil. You're all evil. All of you have bad streaks in you.
Yeah, and I think I'm not sure what my name would be. That's the one problem. The one thing I can't come up with, although I know my power, I would base it off my own life as a writer, and basically my power would be something to the effect of like the pen is mightier than the sword. So I'd have this pen that could do stuff. Like I could draw a dragon in the sky, and it would go after the Joes.
So let's say this. Let's say you use Dragonfire. We were just talking about it. You've harnessed Dragonfire in your pen. So that
there you go.
So you use it on the battlefield to now. Are you drawing or are you writing? Like, is it? You know what I'm saying?
I was thinking drawing, but I could write because I am a writer. That would make more sense, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And then the giant monster fought Flynn. Yeah, that would be a good idea.
So you have like a Dragonfire like fused notebook or something like that, and you write and you write the description. And so, like, if the Joes are countering it, and let's say you gave them flame breath, and they figured a way to stop the flame breath, then you go into your notebook and you write, like, he also has cold breath. And then the Joes are like, no, he just got cold breath. We got to stop that. Something like that?
Yeah, and to make it so it doesn't just go on forever where I automatically win, if they defeat whatever I'm doing, like they defeat my flame breath, maybe the notebook, like, blows up and I go flying backwards or something.
Well,
and I can't for a little while.
I mean, you use that limitation that they do for like what's the young girl on Runaways, where you can only do each thing once. So it's so your creativity, your writer brain, your creativity has to be stimulated because you can only conjure up that dragon one time. And the Joes figure
my name.
Yeah,
my name, Writer's Block.
Writer's Block is perfect.
Bam.
Writer's Block, the Cobra author.
Yes.
Cobra author, writer's block, and what your pen writes becomes reality. Writer's block. Welcome to Joe on Joe.
Ah, yes, a disgruntled cartoonist.
Absolutely, I love it.
Brought in evil by Cobra Commander himself.
I love it. So we've got Cobra Commander now. He's now entered the fray on the show, and what's exciting here is, even though he's wearing his hooded look, if you look closely, he is wearing his later series look. It's not just the hooded Cobra Commander. They actually are referencing the 1992 Cobra Commander because they give him the gold epaulets and stuff, and they give him the larger Cobra symbol on his chest. Like, this isn't just, like, it's not just doing a version of hooded Cobra Commander. So I really dig that because they easily could have just drawn the hooded Cobra Commander that we've known and seen for a million years, but they actually went back to the well. Yeah,
acknowledging continuity, and anything's better than that scuba suit he wore for a while.
Right. Yeah, that was last season. So we escaped it. Hopefully we never see it again. It was hard to watch. It was hard to watch being animated. It was okay as a toy. I didn't hate it as a toy. But watching it animated, there were so many points and odd angles on it that it just really looked hard.
Yeah, I was such a big fan of hooded Cobra Commander, like the original look.
Yeah,
so much. I don't know why, and maybe it's the Baron Zemo fan in me, but I just really like that look.
Well, what's cool? Love Baron Zemo. What's cool is this Cobra. He was actually the talking battle commander, Cobra Commander, and he actually talked. So he came with a little backpack that said, "I'll get you, Cobra, Viper's attack." And I wonder if they actually used Chris Latta as the voice.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I know that around the same period in time, they hadn't quite figured out how to put the voice stuff directly in the action figure.
Oh,
so like you said, there was the backpack, and I know that Marvel did something similar with a Venom figure.
Hold on,
Venom wearing a backpack.
Yeah,
and you'd press the button and it'd be like, "I'm gonna eat your brain."
Are you ready for this? Here. This should come through on the recording.
I'll get you.
Did you hear that?
I did not.
Oh, okay, I don't know if you heard it, but I think our listeners heard it. We just played it from the yojo.com website. It was very quiet. I'll see if I can here's Viper's attack. Hold on, everybody.
Viper's attack.
Yeah, the volume's so low on this. I'll see what I can do to boost it in the final version. But it does not sound like Chris Latta.
Cobra.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, and that's it. The episode just wrapped up while we're marveling to the muted sounds of Cobra Commander.
They freed the cricket. They let him
They
go free.
did. They did. That cricket is currently like running the world, and But listen, who's gonna? I don't want to kill a 2-story cricket. That thing's it's a gift of Mother Nature, right?
It is. And here we're getting our credits. Any familiar names? Is this the same team
Chuck Patton. You know Chuck Patton's work from Justice League, right?
Sure, absolutely.
From back in the day, he was the art director on this whole DIC era. He's a super nice dude. He's from out here, or at least he does shows out here in California. I'm not sure exactly where he's based out of.
Oh, cool.
And I've got a chance to meet him a couple times. Really nice. Next time I see him, I don't know when that'll be, but I've never hit him up for a Joe on Joe chat. But I'm gonna do that the next show he's at that I'm at out here, because I love his stuff from the comic books. And I think the art direction on this show, and I've said this many times, is great on these shows. I think it was always just I feel like it was the budgets. Oh, it's
right.
funny. It's funny. It says Sunbow. We need to dig into this. I'm going to do a little research, ladies and gentlemen. This might not be DIC. We're going to dig into this.
Well, it did say DIC, and then it said Sunbow.
And it said Sunbow at the end. All right. Guess what? We're going to save that for next time. We're going to, I'm going to go on a fact-finding mission, everyone, and I'm going to get to the bottom of it. Gene, it has been a pleasure chatting with you, my friend.
You too, and I'll be listening to this episode and whatever you have coming up.
Absolutely. So remember, everyone, go to nerdnationradio.com, see how you can listen to Gene and help support his show. Gene, you're a delight. Listeners, thank you so much for listening. Or I'm sorry, shall I say, writer's block, you're a delight.
Thank you.
And now you, Joe, and Joeing is half the battle.